All right, are we live? All right, we are live. Hey, we are live. Yay! Hello, everyone. Oh, hello. Let me get in here to find the all the questions and the like. Real Satsang with G, not the tests. There we go. There's the chat. Rob says hello from London. Hello, Rob. Wonderful to have you all here. As people are arriving, please like and share. It helps a great deal. Helps invite new people into this kind of a conversation. And I've been talking to several of my my close friends of late about this, and we all kind of agree that the time has come for the conversation to be elevated to this level of a dialogue. You guys hear me okay? I want to make sure the sound is all right. I can turn it up a little. Oh, that may be a little too loud. Because in the mainstream media and stuff, the conversation is actually quite ignorant. It's polarized. It's everybody taking sides. It's arguing for a side. So to come into a space like we do every week is extremely gratifying. To know that there is. It's not televised. It's not sponsored by ExxonMobil or by Nike or something. But there is going on in the world an incredible leavening, flowering of consciousness. I'm pretty convinced of it. I'm totally convinced of it. I believe that it is the flowering of consciousness that's happening, that's pushing all of the egoic muck to the surface. Long time ago, when I had the very first spiritual opening for myself, that came not as a result of any endeavor of mine, but just by pure grace. It is the vision that came to me so very strongly. The end of original sin and the birth of original innocence. And what it was is seeing this clear distinction between the purity, the original innocence, the pristine perfection of you as you really are, and that pure perfection had never ever been touched by the pollutants, by the muck, by all the horrific stuff that is coming to the surface. But human consciousness going through a transformation has experienced a mix of this, a mix of the true with the false, a mixing of the absolute with the relative, a mixing of the purity of who you really are, and the egoic, constricted, arrogant, and really bad smelling egoic mind. And it's just been playing out in the whole field of human consciousness ever since. It was before that. My life has been dedicated to participating in this conversation, in elevating human consciousness. But that's only because I was the recipient of it, right? I didn't start this thing. This goes back as far as human beings go back. This kind of inner examination that reveals the capacity of the human mind for self-deception and the wisdom that can spot that self-deception. So it all just comes down to the simple question of who are you really? Not who you think you are, but who are you really? And this whole thing we do in satsang is for exploring that inner territory in such a way that it becomes practical and real. that it becomes a lived experience and not just a theoretical idea. So if you're new here, especially everybody, I love everybody just giving you, telling me where you're from, where you're listening from, and especially if this is your first time here or early on, I really like to know that as well. So Rob said hello. Coco says hi from Australia. Hi, Coco. Carrie Brogan. Hi, Carrie. Rob, sound is perfect. Good, good. Ursula, hello from, I'm going to lean back a little bit. It gets a little bit, I'm going to put another pillow here so I can lean back a little bit and not look like I'm, skulking down at the bottom of the screen. Sophia, hi from Switzerland. Hi from Lake Constance, Germany. Ms. Hendrik Beck. Hello, Mr. Beck. Daryl Sanders, hi, GP. Peaceful greetings from Maryland, D.C. area. Hi from Bulgaria, from Ivailo. Carrie Brogan. Could be me, but it appears all is ignorance here in Australia. Boy, it sure seems that way here in the U.S. too, doesn't it? It does seem as though the egoic mind, the darkness, the dark side of of consciousness, excuse me, is winning. It never ceases to amaze me how people can be so easily deceived. How we vote against our own interests, how we go along with intolerable, insufferable things. But again, I have to turn my attention to where I believe the source of it all lies. And, it takes an enormous amount of effort to perpetuate lies. It takes zero effort to perpetuate truth. When you look at the control of the media by just a handful of people, the sheer amount of money that is spent on trying to convince us of stuff that is simply not true. Effectively, for people who that's the only information they let themselves get, that's what happens. But the fact of the matter is that no matter how many people believe a lie, it doesn't become true. It's that simple. And tell the truth. And it's effortless. You don't have to cover your tracks. You don't have to make big ad campaigns. You don't have to be clever in your wording. You just tell the truth. And the beautiful thing about truth is it doesn't require anybody to believe it in order to be true. And it just stands forever. All beliefs, eventually crumble. No matter how much worldly power they're wielding, it's always temporary. The empires always collapse. It's just the way it is. But truth stands forever. And so we're here at Satsang, which means communion with truth. To stand forever with the truth of our own being. And that also means to stand gently and compassionately with those who are deluded, those who are deceived. The word guru in Sanskrit simply means one who dispels darkness. That's why we're here. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here. That's what our job is, to dispel darkness. And we can only do that by just continually deepening ourselves into the truth, establishing ourselves into the truth, and consequently cultivating the deepest kind of compassion, because we all can remember what it was like to be ignorant, to feel that constant suffering, and just can't help but want to alleviate that suffering for all mankind. So, yes, it does appear as that there's nothing but ignorance in Australia and the US and many, many other places around the world. But appearances are not the truth. They're only an appearance. So greetings from Ireland, from John Sheehan. Hello, John. Dave and Elaine, hi, GP and all. Greetings from Southeast England. Chris Gills, hello, GP. In all the years of you studying non-duality, would you say that seeking knowledge all the time is a waste? It never comes to an end? I find when I am in the self, there is no need for knowledge. It is a waste of time if you think that the accumulation of knowledge is going to bring you to the true sense of who you are and the ultimate liberation. Nothing that you know, that is relative knowledge, will stay with you because it's relative knowledge. Human knowledge is relative knowledge. It's useful. We have to have it. I mean, I have to know how to work the lights and the cameras and the stuff that are doing this. I have to know how to get on YouTube and set this up so I can do a satsang. You guys got to know how to get on in order to listen to satsang. But that knowledge, of course, has changed, right? And this technology didn't even exist, 15 years ago, right? So, and it will change. The way in which we do things changes all the time. The knowledge and skills we need in everyday life change all the time. So they're not absolute knowledge. There's a different word, knowledge. In Sanskrit, it's jnana, G-N-A-N-A, or J-N-A-N-A, depending on the translator. And it refers to transcendent knowledge, a direct knowing. The best example I can use to express it is I can talk to you all day long about an orange. I can give you its chemical makeup, color, shading, and all of that sort of stuff, its relative sizes, where it does, what kind of thing, what class. I can give you all sorts of knowledge about an orange, but that's knowledge about. If I just hand you an orange and you peel it and taste it, that's jnana. That's knowledge of. That's direct knowledge of, intimate knowledge of. That is the true knowledge of yourself. And you can't get that through the accumulation of knowledge. When you taste it, as you have said that you mentioned that you did, when I find myself in the self, there is no need for knowledge. That is knowledge. That is prajna wisdom. That is the wisdom that takes you to the other side. That is the true ultimate knowledge. Or that is Vedanta, which it means the end of knowledge, the ultimate of knowledge, the ending of relative knowledge, and the discovery of the absolute knowledge. Jean-Luc Picard. So just understanding the difference between that, because we can't function in life without relative knowledge, you know how to get places, you know how to get home, right? But the true knowledge is direct. And that knowledge is totally subjective and can only be experienced directly and can only be pointed at by teaching, which is what we do here all in satsang. We're simply pointing everyone to the place where that direct knowledge can happen, right? So I'm handing you the orange. Here, taste the orange. It's not enough to know about it. It's not enough to have a lot of non-dual ideas, unless those ideas are used as pointers to get to a direct experience, a direct seeing. And by experience, I don't mean like some kind of emotional high. I don't mean some altered state of consciousness. I don't mean the hens parting and angels singing. What I mean is just the intimate sense of simply being yourself, being who you actually are. And from there, all the relative knowledge needed to give expression to that arises. It's like an expression in art, right? The art itself, the form, the color, the paint, and all this stuff, the stuff that makes up the work of art, is just how it appears to us. There's something magic, something transcendent that that shines through a real work of art. Something that you can't take the Mona Lisa apart and examine the paint and find Mona Lisa. Something completely extraordinary, another dimension shines through. But that's how it is. The dimension is the truth. The dimension is the pure, empty spirit. The manifestation is a form that it takes. And all of our words, all of our actions, all of the things we do are that. They are the representation of the reality of your inner world. The big illusion is mistaking the manifestation for the source. We don't see it as a manifestation. We don't see it as an expression or a reflection. We see it as an actual thing, like thinking that you are the reflection in the mirror, right? Well, you're not. It's a lot like you, but it's not you. It can even be a perfect image of you, but it's not you. And so we just have to be clear about the limits of human knowledge. Human knowledge is always relative. It's always the description of one thing in terms of something else. But when you completely turn within, stepping outside of all thought and emotion and sensation, you have stepped beyond the threshold of human knowledge. You don't need or want relative knowledge of yourself. That would be a thought. You want the direct experience of your thought, which means you want to understand your true nature, consciousness, without mixing it up with anything else, with no external references, past, present, future, name, form, associations, memories, history, race, gender, beliefs. Put all of that aside, which is the sum total of human knowledge. And now you step into the place of direct knowledge, direct understanding, direct insight. And that doesn't need any external knowledge to get there, to maintain it. It is the source of knowledge. Being the source of all knowledge, that is the knowledge that is relative, right? It itself is completely absolute, which is why it can't be put into words. It can only be pointed at. So I hope that answers it for you, Chris. Let's see. Ava says, GB, what a beautiful evening with wisdom shared by you, not only Satsang, but also week one, Chakras and Scientific. Really great presentation. Thank you. Oh, you've already watched it. Well, I'm adding some more videos tonight. I actually did a few before this. It's unfolding as it happens. And I do want to put in a plug for my class. I really hope you'll join me. It's 10 weeks of a total immersion in this, to truly understand the difference between the absolute and relative, how the inner world actually works, how the manifest world works, and how you can come to the deep understanding that while it's not you, it is the vehicle of expression for you. And that is equally important. To be engaged as fully as the harmonious human being is the object of life. It's not a transcendence that takes you out of it. It's a transcendence that completely immerses you in it. So please consider joining me for the next 10 weeks. Just go to gpwalsh.com/chakras and you'll have a great time. Dave says hi from Massachusetts. Hi, Dave. Lisa with a lot of Z's from the East Coast. Hi. Sue McIntosh. Sue from South Africa. Anja is here from Germany. Sophia is from Switzerland. Hendrik from Lake Constance, Germany. I think I skipped some of them here. Ireland. I got Chris GP from Vermont. Hi G. Thanks for your reply on YouTube earlier. Oh, you're quite welcome. I do, by the way, if you guys are watching any of my videos, please like and share, but comment. If you got a question, ask me. I do my best to answer every single. I think I've done at least said something about every single comment that I get on YouTube. So by all means, make comments. These comments, I think, go away. The live chat, it was interesting. They don't put any of those comments on when they when the live video ends. YouTube makes it, a regular video there, but they remove all of the chat. So Coco says, "Hi GP, I'm creating a place where I can acknowledge that existence is consciousness, but I find myself in a cycle of questioning why is there the need for one to pay attention to conscious awareness if everything, including the mind, is consciousness. I can't help but feel that practice is necessary and at the same time unnecessary." And that is exactly the right way to put it, right? And this is the paradoxical nature of all non-dual inquiry. It is both necessary and unnecessary. It's necessary for as long as it's necessary. I think the best way to think about it is that practice is needed until it isn't needed anymore. And you'll know when that is, right? To take the position that because you have a non-dual insight that to push practice out now is what I call neo-Advaita. It's an attempt to intellectually use non-duality rather than experientially, so that if there's a need to practice, you practice. If that's what's in front of you in this moment, then that is your truth. That is your practice. That is your life. That is what consciousness is doing in this moment, and therefore you should participate in it fully. You should honor it for what it is and let it play itself out. We really want to go beyond all the labels of absolute and relative. The relative is simply what the absolute is doing in this moment, what consciousness is manifesting in this moment. Ultimately, you see that practice is only necessary for the sense of a separate self, and that the infinite awareness doesn't require any practice to be the infinite awareness. But this must be realized. This is really important. We can't just think about that. It can't be a thought. It must be self-realized. And you can ask yourself the question, well, everything appearing to me is consciousness. Good. Now you're standing in this place that every experience you have, you recognize, is consciousness. And you are consciousness, which means everything you're experiencing is yourself. So is there someone that that needs practice? No. Is the experience of practicing happening? Yes. So let it. And you simply ask yourself, who is it that's experiencing thinking and sensation and an emotion? Who's experiencing of it? Oh, somebody else I have to block. Excuse me, folks, while I get rid of somebody here. Mm-hmm. 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 So I have to, how do I remove them completely? Hide user, go away, be hidden, okay. And report. Harassment. Sorry, everyone. Okay. You just take up so much stuff there. Okay, good. Now they're gone. So, it kind of is the thing we all have to come to terms with. And everything is necessary until it isn't, right? If there's any remaining remnant of the sense of being anything other than consciousness, well, then keep up the practice. It loses nothing, I wake up in the morning, and if there's a sense of a separate self, well, I'm just with it. What is the practice then? The practice isn't really, you can look at practice as trying to arrive at some place, or you can look at practice as like practicing an art. Right? If you sit in meditation, you could say meditation is a practice. And a relative way of looking at it is that I am having this practice in order to attain awakening or enlightenment. There's a wonderful story in Zen, a Zen master who was walking through the Zendo, and there was this young monk, practicing very diligently. You could tell he could feel the energy of just very, very, very resolute in his practice. He was sitting there. And so he walked in and said, so what are you doing? And he says, I'm meditating. He says, well, very good. So why are you meditating? The young monk says, to become a Buddha. He says, yes, I see. So the young monk goes back to meditating, and the master sits down next to him, and the young monk hears this sound next to him and tries to ignore it for a bit, but he knows the master is sitting there, so he looks and goes, what are you doing? And there's the master with a brick and a rag, and he's rubbing on the brick. And he says, Master, what are you doing? He says, I'm trying to make a mirror. And the monk goes, Master, you can't make a mirror making on a brick. And he says, and you can't make a Buddha by meditating. The point is this: you can either practice to get something, or you can practice as the something. When you meditate, be the Buddha meditating. Don't meditate to become the Buddha. As you can see, you're starting from the standpoint of a separate self, attempting to attain some state. But if instead, while you're practicing, you are that, like an artist practicing their art, even though they've mastered it, it's still regarded as a practice because there's no end to it. There's no ultimate goal. It is just forever unfolding, becoming larger and larger, more and more expansive. So when you approach any practice that you do, approach it from that point of view, so that it is not an attainment. You're not trying to get anything, and that'll give a completely different complexion to the way you approach. And at that point, it's not necessary or unnecessary. It's simply you living your life. The ultimate practice is your life. Your life is the practice of being a Buddha, the practice of being fully awake. Are you the Buddha brushing their teeth? Are you the Buddha preparing dinner? Are you the Buddha driving your car? Who are you? And you'll find there's all these subtle little ways in which we think of ourselves as being a separate self, attempting to attain awakening, rather than the awakening itself simply becoming self-realized. That's why Ramana referred to it as self-realization. It wasn't getting realized. It was the self realizing the self. The imaginary self you think you are simply falls away. And then life is a practice, but it's not a practice as in an attainment. It becomes living life is the practice. Being fully what this moment requires is the practice. Right now, my practice is being in satsang, doing this, answering questions. That's my practice. It's also my life, right? They're one and the same. You can't separate them. And is this necessary or unnecessary? It's transcendent to that. It's simply what I do. It's simply what this moment requires. And therefore I show up for it 100%. That's practice. Is that clear? Right? This is where your everyday life becomes the Buddha. The ordinary human being becomes the Buddha, and not some specialized non-dual state of any kind. So thank you, Coco. I hope that helped. Dave and Elaine, we note thoughts arising that instantly trigger contractions in the body. Yes. If attached to mind, these can collectively reinforce a sense of a separate self. Without attachment, there's the awareness of presence and a sense of localization of a body, but different to the contractions associated with separation, but different from the contractions associated with separation. Does this resonate with you? Thanks. Let me read that again. We notice thoughts that arise, and thoughts can instantly trigger contractions in the body. Yeah, when a thought arises and there's a reaction, it means there's a continuum between the thought and the emotional pattern, the emotional conditioning. And the only thing that the separate self is made of is thought and emotion. That's it. That's all there is to it. And so that represents the energy that the separate self has been projected on. Now, I think if attached to the mind, these can collectively reinforce a sense of a separate self. Correct. If there's a sense that this shouldn't be there, that's a separate self. Or an unconsciously just going along with it. Oh, this is who I am. I hate that. A thought comes, oh, what a nasty person. And there's this feeling of they're a nasty person, right? Now, if you can recognize that, oh, it's simply a thought and an energetic feeling that has arisen in the system. It's a residue. It's a reverberation from the past. It has no meaning. And you remain completely disattached from it. It just fades away. Right? Now you're standing and viewing it consciously, and there's no separate self there, because there's not a separate self in the thought or the emotional reaction. The separate self doesn't actually exist at all. It's a projection on those. So if you're simply aware of it and no story, no attachment to it, one way or the other, oh, I wish that would stop happening, right? That's a different kind of attachment. Attachment aversion, they're two sides of the same coin. You simply see it for what it is. A conditioned response, a habit pattern, has absolutely no meaning, and you just stay in the sense of your own being. Eventually, those won't even arise anymore. There won't be a thought. There won't be a reaction. But if you get sucked into a story about those, especially if your sense of identity is I'm spiritual and I'm working towards enlightenment, there can be this, oh, this shouldn't be happening. This is in the way. I'm going to have to meditate for an hour to get rid of it. That's all the story around what in fact is absolutely nothing at all. Simply a reactive pattern that happened at some time in the past. It got set up as a pattern and has been sustained by the belief in it. When that belief is withdrawn, the sense of identity is withdrawn back into the self. It is now seen as just a reactive pattern with no inner authority, no power, nothing. There is no separate self at all, not even in imagination, and then it dissipates. The awareness of presence, without attachment, there is awareness of presence and a sense of a localization of the body, but different to the contractions associated with separate. Yes, that's correct. There's a sense of presence. There's an awareness of this reaction in the system. There's the awareness of the feeling of the presence of a body, which is simply an energetic sense that everyone has. It doesn't even mean there's a body there. We all have this energetic sense of there being a body there. But without the story attached to that reactive pattern, it does have a different effect. The contractions, first off, they are without suffering. They are without continuity. They are without authority. So immediately, a lot of the heaviness is simply gone. And now you can gradually or immediately just experience it as a pure sensation in the body that has no overhead, no past, no future, and no real authoritative presence. Now you're free of it. It doesn't have to be gone for you to be free of it. It simply has to be reduced to what it actually is, an energetic vibration running through the system and nothing more. I believe that's what you're saying, and yes, I resonate with that. That's exactly what is happening. I think if I understand the way what you wrote, then yes, we're in total agreement about that. Sue McIntosh, hello Sue. GP, I don't know if this is the right place to ask, but I just love you so much. Would love to know about your life to make this experience with you more personal. I do reveal, bits and pieces of my life. It's had some extraordinary moments. It's had some rather many more, much more mundane, parts of life. Most of life is mundane, right? After I'm done your satsang, we're on YouTube live all over the world. It seems like such a big deal. And I get up here and I, after this, I'll have tea, make myself something to eat, edit some videos and things like that. It becomes very, very rote. I tell a little bit about my story about how this happened to me in the book The Tao of Allowing, which is an audiobook and also available on Kindle. The second edition is just an audiobook. The first edition, which is an actual book form or Kindle. And I also have some audio about it in the Inner Reconciliation courses. But in satsang, I don't really tell the story that much in satsang. It's more in like classes and things like that, simply because I like to stick to the questions about it. But the brief thing is that when I was 19 years old, at the end of my rope and not wanting to live anymore, and just hopefully addicted to drugs and just a way of life that wasn't the least bit useful. I just squandered everything, and one night, in just complete and total desperation, out of nowhere, this voice started to speak to me and showed me things that just completely transformed me within months. Just everything just fell away, and it was a completely different human being. And from that point on, I've had a very different perspective. I've had a very different way of looking at things. I've had a different set of motivations. But simultaneously, when that did happen to me, I had a rather horrific childhood. It was a very just completely void of any kind of love or acceptance, and I was completely dysfunctional. So even though I had a phenomenal revelation that lasted with me my entire life, the learning how to live it was a horrendous chore. I was just completely incompetent in living. I couldn't do anything as a result. I had bad relationships. Just what a stream of bad choices. And, little by little began to understand how it is that we can have deep insights into the nature of reality and yet still face these incredibly difficult circumstances in our lives. Just confused the hell out of me for years. But little by little, as grace continued to unfold this to me, the wisdom of how to go about integrating and living a truly spiritual life, eventually unfolded and became deeper and deeper. I mean, that happened in 1971, and it was the 90s before I'd run across Advaita Vedanta and Zen, which were the things that actually were the last pieces of the puzzle to put together. So, there's been, I am no stranger to struggle. Stuff comes up, and I don't claim to be a Ramana Maharshi or a Nisargadatta or a Shankara or a Buddha. Even though I take that position, and I recommend it to not be thinking of oneself in terms of striving, but to think of oneself in terms of just being the self. But simultaneously, I won't claim more for myself than I've actually proven in my life. And I think that's the only honest thing to do. And in some ways, it makes the teaching more approachable. I'm not sitting up here and wearing ochre robes, with people at my feet. I am just an ordinary guy who was extraordinarily blessed, before he ended his life. And so the end result has just been, my own personal way of expressing this, which could be irreverent at times and humorous, and other times just deadly serious. So, there's not really that much to know about me. I like what I do. I like writing about this stuff. I like talking about this stuff, and for the most part, I'm really not all that interesting. Other than that, there's not much to know. But things, little stories about my life and the like, they do trickle out in the various classes and the like, and in some of the videos, mostly in the classes, because that's when I have an opportunity, especially live, when I'm talking to people. It's a little more intimate environment than a platform like this, or just putting my videos out on YouTube. So thanks, Sue. October Paul says, "Hi GP, do you have any recommendations for people who try to turn awareness in on itself but find it difficult to stay focused? Also, if there's no free will, is self-realization predestined? I know that everything is arising in this moment, but I don't have a better word than predestination. Does this experience we are having have any value or meaning, or is it just a transitory dream?" That is a question I get so often. And if it really was just, this predestined thing, that it didn't have any meaning, that it's just transitory dream, it just sucks the life out of it, doesn't it? Just take that in. We even if you come from a particular Advaita background, it says things like that. Nothing matters. There is nobody here to do anything. It's just a dream. Nothing has any meaning or purpose. Just take it into your heart and ponder it. Nothing has any purpose. Does that feel at all true to you? It doesn't to me. Now, I can clearly discern the difference between perfect eternal meaning and relative meaning, right? I mean, right now, this computer I'm talking to you guys on has meaning, right? Has meaning because it's helping me do this, right? There can be another time when it's so frustrating because it won't do what I want it to do. I want to throw it out the window. So the meaning something has is not inherent, right? All meaning has comes from us. That's what it means, that it's transitory, that it is, how you put it, it's a transitory dream. It doesn't mean that meaning doesn't exist. It doesn't exist absolutely. So the meaning of something, that's what Buddha meant when he said there's no self. He wasn't being a nihilist, as he was accused. What he was saying is that there is no inherent self. Nothing has inherent meaning. You know, if you're not thirsty and I offer you this glass of water, like get up there so we can get in get in focus, it's like, well, thanks, and you put it aside, right? But if you're like totally parched and I hand you that, it's like glug, 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 meaning's completely different. Same glass, right? That's what this is pointing at. What is the absolute meaning of something? There is absolute meaning in things. There's Steve Jordan referred to it as absolute value. The isness of something, the pure existence of something, the meaning it has is that it is the manifestation of, the reflection of, the embodiment of the absolute infinite beauty and love that is the nature of true being. That's meaningful, right? Yes, there's a transitory dream that we are experiencing, but the moment it is no longer seen as a dream, is no longer believed, right? When it's no longer seen to be the reality, it ceases to be the dream and it immediately becomes the manifestation of the absolute. The very same thing. Samsara immediately becomes nirvana because it's not a thing that you get rid of. It's the perception of the thing that you happen to be perceiving. If you see it as something external to yourself, it becomes an objective world. It appears to be self-acting and have inherent meaning, and that's where argument and conflict and suffering and all of that comes from, right? It's the snake in the rope. But if you don't see it like that, as a separate entity, as a separate world, that is samsara or Maya, but instead you see it as the manifestation of the truth of being, it immediately becomes nirvana or heaven, right? The very same thing. The meaning isn't inherent in it. The meaning is given to it. Just like the flowers behind me, the yellow is not, that's not a yellow flower, right? The yellow is not an attribute of the flower. The flower simply has a reflective or a absorptive characteristic. Yellow is in the light. Not only is it in the light, it's in the mechanism that's perceiving the light. The quality, the character, the meaning, the purpose of everything is the reflection of consciousness, which transcends all meaning, transcends all purpose. But that does not negate purpose and meaning. It subsumes it into the biggest. And what's the biggest purpose? The purpose of existence is to express existence. The purpose of the absolute is to be the absolute. And the nature of your absolute being is to manifest itself constantly in form. If the form is seen as something distinct and separate, you get the world. If it's seen as the manifestation of being, you get the universe. That's what Shankara meant when he said the common Brahmin Hindu view of it is the world is an illusion, only Brahma is real. And Shankara added to that the sentence that made the other two, the true meaning of the other two, come through, where he said, Brahma is the world. I am what I perceive. That means the meaning it has is my meaning. I am seeing myself reflected back at me. Love is being reflected in love. And then everything is just bathed in meaning and purpose and beauty. The dream is only our imagination about what we're perceiving. When that goes away, you are perceiving things as they actually are. And then you see the infinite meaning, infinite value, infinite purpose, infinite beauty, infinite love, manifested in every single little molecule. Let's see if I answered all of that. So this practice you started with, recommendations, people who try to turn awareness in on itself but find it difficult to stay focused. Right. The difficulty in trying to focus when you're turning your attention, when you're trying to basically see the one who's looking, right? You realize, of course, it's impossible, right? The I can't see itself, right? The self cannot see itself because it's not an object to be beheld. But the resistance you're feeling, the difficulty staying focused, right, is simply the habit energy of the mind trying to find an object it can grab onto. It wants awareness to be some kind of an object, even just an ephemeral concept, right? So the mind turns consciousness or awareness into something that I, the person, am trying to attain to or understand. I'm trying to see it, but I can't see it, right? Well, you can't see it because you're it. You can't see anything from a distance of zero. So the recommendation I make is keep doing it and just notice, this is the mind trying to substitute an image for me rather than a direct experience of me, and just go, okay, I'm watching the mind now give me that, do that thing. I'm actually behind that lens. So I'm witnessing that happening. I am the witness of it. I cannot be witnessed. So then, if I can't be seen, if I can't be known as intellectually or objectively, right, is one thing knowing something else, how then do I know that I exist? If I say, do you exist? You say yes. And in between the time I say it and you answer, you looked somewhere, right? Yes, it's not an object. And after a while, that the habit energy of trying to find an object will dissipate, but it's very real. But it's not being known in a relative way. It's not being known objectively. You're knowing it subjectively. You just keep going back to the sense, that intuitive, undeniable, constant sense of existence. And you'll get pulled on the other side of the lens for a while. Oh, back here. To whom is this appearing? To me. Okay, who am I? This feeling of being. And mind you, when you get to that point, when that becomes more stable, that's the end of practice. No effort can take you beyond that. That's simply the end of all practice. You just stay there. And eventually the self reveals itself to itself. That's how this works. That is the ultimate and final practice that any human being can do. Because from that point on, no effort can actually even be given. You cannot do it, right? So it is simply going to the sense of being. And you simply withdraw yourself from all thought, right? It's difficult to, how do you put it? It's difficult to stay focused, right? Well, that's a thought and a feeling. Notice that there's a thought, I can't stay focused. Okay, well, who's that I? That I, there's an I that is aware of that thought that says, I can't stay focused. There's also a feeling, right? There's a feeling that's trying to draw your attention away from this place where, as far as the mind's concerned, there's nothing there. There's nothing for it to see. It's like looking into complete and utter blackness, right? And there's this impulse to try to move away from that. We go, oh, there's this, I'm seeing that impulse. So what is it that's seeing it? That question alone, to whom is this arising? Who is actually seeing this? Who is that? Who am I? And that is what will keep you focused there. If you just notice that all of these things are happening in front of the lens and that you're behind the lens, it will keep bringing you back behind it, keep bringing you back. Your attention will go out inevitably and go, wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. What am I seeing? What's being seen? Right? And to whom is this appearing? Oh, that's me. So there's me here. There's what's appearing. Okay, who's this? Notice your attention is back there now. The focus is back there. This is how you do it. And eventually it'll become very natural to do that, very easy to do that. You'll be able to do it when you're driving or having a conversation. Be very conscious of being in conversation, and be absolutely aware of my presence in the conversation, right? And that all of this is happening. I'm aware of, right now doing satsang, I'm aware of the questions, I'm aware of you, I'm aware of the energy I'm feeling from you all. I'm also aware of the thoughts that are coming to me, right? And I'm not inventing these thoughts. I'm not manufacturing them there somewhere. They're appearing to me just as they're appearing to you. And at exactly the same time, I might add, right? So there's this constant awareness of what is happening, but that awareness itself is completely indescribable. It's because it's not an object, right? Let's see if I got all of your stuff here. October, Paul. And also, if there's no free will, is self-realization predestined? Well, the first thing I would say is, whether it is or not, if awakening matters to you, you do whatever needs to be done in a moment, right? So the focusing of that attention on that sense of being is, if you're doing it, whether it's predestined or a choice, do it. Right? And then we could talk about free will as a separate thing. When somebody says, can I make a choice? Is there such a thing as free will? The answer is no, then yes, then no. If you are completely identified as the person, right, which most people are, every thought, every feeling, every decision, every choice, every action is a conditioned response of the nervous system and not conscious. In that case, no, there is no free will there. It's a completely completely predictable robotic behavior. You're nothing more than an automaton. There's no capacity to distinguish. Your values, your beliefs, all of it is simply programs in the nervous system. We awaken to that. You wouldn't be in this if you hadn't woken to it. Even a person studying something as remedial as like the law of attraction has awakened somewhat to that consciousness. That all of it's awakening. Anytime I get to the place where I can clearly see, wait a minute, I don't actually want to do that. It's a habit, right? I want to choose this instead. You're in consciousness. Now, consciousness is intelligence. It is the discernment between this and that. It can tell the difference between this is beautiful, this is ugly. This is a high quality piece of art. This is a piece of commercial art with good skill. This is junk, right? Right? Like what I write, what I draw, right? Junk, right? So what is it that discerns between those? And you could say that, oh, then I'm going to choose the better. Well, the very recognition that it is the better, right? That it is the most beautiful, it's the most loving, is itself the decision. So seeing and the deciding become one. So yes, you could say there's choice. I'm choosing between this and that. But deeper you go into it, you're simply seeing that it isn't like there's no free will or there is free will. There's only one will. There's only the will of truth. And when you see something is true, you don't have to, it doesn't take an act of will in order to align with it, right? When you saw clearly 2 + 2 = 4, that's what it is all the time. That's the way you use it. You didn't have to exercise free will in order to not do 2 + 2 = 5. The truth brought with it the will of God, you might say, just the natural force and power of truth itself. And so the capacity early on, as consciousness is developing, in the beginning, it may take the form of making better choices. And I highly recommend it, right? When somebody realizes, oh, I've created this life because I've made these decisions. So I want to make different decisions, right? Now you could say that's an act of choice, free will. You could also say that that's just a higher level of consciousness that is now asserting itself on the circumstance. Either way you put it's fine, right? Because the actual practice, the actual way it's working out, is consciousness is expanding. It is becoming more and more conscious. Therefore, it is shedding more and more of simply the robotic conditioning, right? Where in robotic conditioning, there is no free will. This computer has no free will. It can't decide whether or not it's going to, sometimes they seem like they do, but it's not going to decide here whether or not it's going to let me broadcast, right? I press the button, it does what it's told. That's the robotic nature where we all start. That's what the human body is like. And if consciousness ever goes beyond that, then you could say that there's no such thing as free will, because they're not making any choices. With the expansion of consciousness, as it begins to free itself from the limitations of identification with the separate self, which is the robot, freedom of choice appears to emerge. And on that level, it's fine to call it that. And then eventually it gets subsumed into the bigger picture, where you see it's simply the honest ascertaining of what in fact is real. And once something is real, is seen, you can't unsee it. You can't go back. When you know what love is, you don't go back to hate. You just can't do it. So I hope that answers all of your questions there, October Paul. Value and meaning. I think I covered it. I think I covered it. And what time is it here? 2:03. 2. Okay, good. You let me know if I didn't get it. Chris Skills. Hello, buddy. The seeker becomes too much, always wanting to know more and more. Is there any point? Well, yes. And this is actually because you'd asked earlier about studying on duality, seeking knowledge. It becomes, as you mature, in the beginning, it can be, it's like anything new. It's just exciting. There's all sorts of fresh ideas. There's a lot of freedom, inner freedom that's coming as a result of the non-dual stuff that is being that's coming up for you, that you're interested in, that you're absorbing. Now, what we need to do is absorb it, to really, really take it in through practice, through meditation, through self-inquiry, and the like, which I'm actually going to be focusing, the live retreat I'm going to be doing in Canada in the summer is going to be focused on self-inquiry. I'll be putting out more information about that later. It's in July. So is there any point? Yes. To just say, I shouldn't be gaining any knowledge and throw it all away is premature. I do find that people can become quite addicted to yet another video, yet another book, yet another course, yet another retreat. And I think we do have to watch ourselves carefully. Have I really absorbed and practiced what I've already gotten before I start looking elsewhere? If I'm sitting here in a moment and I'm in an inquiry, and suddenly I feel like, oh, maybe I'll go watch a Muji video or a GP video or something, right? I would question that. I would say, wait, stop, right? Am I being distracted now? Okay. And you can feel it. You can feel an intensity about it. And you'll notice that those distractions come when you're pushing further into the inquiry than you had before. the mind goes, uh-oh, they're on to something, and they throw a rock in the bush, right? Squirrel, right? that's the way it works. You're on the verge of actually breaking through, which is when the distractions will come hard and heavy. And there'll be this feeling, I want to do something, or I want to watch a movie, or this is too hard. All sorts of stuff will come up. It just comes with experience that you can be able to discern when it really is time to get a fresh insight, and when I really need to just stay with what I've got, to just keep the inner momentum going, right? Because the inquiry, until you get to that place of just being, the place beyond which you cannot go, there's effort involved, right? And as long as there's effort, the mind's got a little doorway in there to kind of throw its rock in the bush to try to distract you. So all I can say is, it's a kind of thing that you develop a sixth sense for, just kind of an intuition for. There are times, if I'm working with somebody individually on something, I can just blatantly say, stop. You don't need to do that. Yeah, it's a distraction. I can tell, and I'll say so, right? I can't always tell in a format like that, because I get the words, I don't actually get I can get the energy behind it. But I do know you, and I would say at this point, I would say it's a mix. There's a mix of a hunger for knowledge, and I honor that, and I think you do need to feed that. But there is also, the inquiry for you is relatively new, right? So you're going to be running up into different layers. So before I go running after knowledge, I would say, okay, how far can I take this? And even take one of the questions that you might bring to me, bring it into yourself, hand it off down to this deep part of you, the sense of beingness, and see if an answer doesn't come from there. So rather than looking for it out there, see if it comes from out there. And, then, okay, if it doesn't, all right, good. So it's okay. Go somewhere else, you can write a comment on one of my videos that I can answer, ask me a question, look at another video, but make sure you're taking the time to do the inquiry, right? And what I mean by the inquiry is, I mean withdrawing from thought, withdrawing from emotion, and withdrawing from sensation. They're there. You're not stopping them. You really can't, right? You're not trying to make them go away. You're just noticing that they are seen, and that you are the seer. And that seer cannot be seen. The perceiver cannot be perceived. So you're looking for a different way of knowing. And you can just explore how it is that you know that you are. Not only you are, you're aware that you are. You're aware of being aware, right? Now, there's not two awareness. There's not you and awareness here, right? Right? The awareness that is aware of you, the you that is aware of awareness, must be awareness, right? So you keep moving deeper into that, just the experience of being aware, right? Which continually is withdrawing itself from thoughts. And the mind will always be trying to give you a picture of you. It's a picture, right? I don't want a picture of me. I want the direct experience of myself. What is my direct experience? Well, it's just this sense of being. It's empty. It's invisible. It has no form. It has no shape. It appears to have no beginning or end. These are how you just explore it. Just be there. Be completely engaged in it. And if that completely takes you over, there'll be no more need of any other teaching, right? Or very little, right? There'll be not much need to read or acquire, because this is it. All the true teachings are pointing you to that. Right? So once you're doing that, once you're there, once you're established there, once that is your consistent practice, the rest of this becomes not unnecessary, because I can still pick up, something from Nisargadatta or Ramana Maharshi and feel inspired in the practice, but it's rare. It's not like I do. The only thing most of the things I read now are just different ways for me to approach teaching it, right? To reach different states of mind, right? But not the actual practice itself. So once you've gotten to that practice, you can be pretty sure that less and less of the invitations to go watch something are legitimate. Right? So, because the real ones, that's where they're pointing, that's where they're always pointing. Right? So if you're there, stay there. It may even feel uncomfortable, because there's the habit energy that wants to be entertained. Let's face it, the mind wants its eye candy or mind candy, right? And non-duality can be a very attractive mind candy, because it's very interesting, right? It's deep, it's penetrating, it's powerful, it's subtle, right? So it can be it as an intellectual pursuit can be quite intoxicating, right? But we're not interested in that. We're interested in what it's pointing at, right? And what's it pointing at? Your own awareness of being aware, so that that pure, unmixed awareness becomes your I. So when you use the word I, that's what you're referring to, not to a personal sense of self, not to someone who's trying to get there, but the place to which that one is trying to get. The place that's watching that one try to get there. You find you've been there the whole time. And where you stay there, all the stuff's going to come up. All the habit patterns, all the conditioning, the vasanas, the repository consciousness, all of that is going to come up. There's no way to avoid it until it's over. It's reached its end. And the self, which is pure awareness, aware of itself, recognizes itself. And that is awakening, or full awakening, or self-realization. So I think I got that for you, Chris. Wildcat Drums, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you here. Love your channel, man. Love you. He's a really good drummer, and he's got his own, reaction channel with different kinds of drummers. You guys should check out Wildcat Drums. He's good. Well, I'm a musician, so I really appreciate when music comes up. And I was a drummer for many years, so listening to a good drummer, it's very, very fun. Okay, Jay, hi Jay, namaste G. What do you mean by real and unreal when it comes to the brain and body? Would there be a physical brain when it comes surgeons who operate on the brain? Isn't it real when we see our body in the mirror? Let's see. Oh. All right, I'm going to... My hesitation is, how do I... when you take a radical position, like I do, and like the teachers that I admire do, a lot of explanation is necessary, and I also don't want to lose people, and I don't want it to get intellectual, right? I want this to be a direct experience. If one genuinely examines your experience of sensation, that is, you're looking at me right now on this screen, right? Or you're listening to me, maybe, right? Whatever the sense you might be, or any object in the room that you can look at, right? You cannot separate the sensation from the object, right? No sensation, as far as you're concerned, the object would not exist. The existence of that object would be completely theoretical. This was the essence of the mind experiment called Schrodinger's cat, right? Right. Without the perception of it, the existence of it is questionable, right? All we have to go on is our perception. Now, if you look at it from the point of view of science, you don't see an object out there, you see an object here, period. Light strikes the eye, it gets transformed through a bunch of stuff, gets something, and there's an image that's being beheld, right? Here, right here, not out there. So its out there-ness is completely a belief. It's an assumption. It's a deep assumption. It's a widely held assumption. It's the assumption of materiality. It's the material model, a model that is questioned by many, many people, because consciousness is the hard problem. Science, that's quote unquote hard problem. Science itself, because as far as the theoretical physics are concerned, consciousness should not exist. There should be no sense of an I. You break all of the neurological part of it down and you get to this image, but you still can't explain something seeing the image, right? What's seeing it? This is where you take materiality to its ultimate conclusion. So now there's this completely mysterious something that, while it, the theory, not even a theory, the hypothesis is that it's just some other function of the brain, right? And eventually you go, well, okay, what is it that's actually finally seeing this image, hearing this sound, hearing my words, seeing this picture? And you go, and suddenly many have concluded it's not in the brain. That's not what is perceiving it. Okay, so now let's start taking it the other direction. Right? That is, we start with this material model and we end up with this mysterious consciousness, which is a total mystery, completely unexplained by science. They just say, well, we have no idea what it is, but everything works the same. We got the whole model down. We'll eventually explain it, which of course is nonsense. It's utter nonsense. And there's several scientists who are contradicting that. Rupert Sheldrake being one. It was a fascinating guy to listen to. Now let's go from the other direction. Look at your direct experience. Okay? Forget your beliefs about it, the brain, the body, the surgeon, all of that. And notice that the only thing you ever experience are these images being perceived by consciousness. And when you look at that image, just look at the picture of a cup or whatever, I've got this glass of water here, right? Any object, recognizing that the only thing you are experiencing is an image in consciousness. Is there anything about that image, the direct experience of that image, that is telling you that that thing exists independently of the consciousness? Explore it for yourself. I came to the conclusion, no. I cannot find any concrete evidence that that thing exists outside of my consciousness. Which means I can start from a premise that it starts with consciousness. It doesn't end there. It starts there. Well, then what is this that I am perceiving? Is there a brain? Is there a body at all? Well, I've never experienced a body. I've experienced a whole range of different sensations. If I look at every single one of those sensations, I see no evidence of a body. The body I see is a thought, an assumption about an origin of these sensations. But I never see the origin. I only see the sensations. So I conclude there is no origin to these sensations. They are created by consciousness itself. And now consciousness becomes the primary thing in the universe. It starts with consciousness, and out of that a universe comes, rather than the opposite way, coming this way. And right now in human human history, it's completely mixed. You know, there's the strict materialists that say, well, it's all matter. Yeah, this is nonsense. What you're saying now is just nonsense because you don't know any better. You're not educated enough. We know, right? And that's one side of it. Then there's this other side, small but growing, that's saying, well, you know, if we put your basic assumptions of materialistic science to the test, turn them into questions rather than definite statements, and subject to them to the same scrutiny that science subjects everything to, they come up a little bit short. They turn out to be assumptions and not truths. So in answering your question, then, the brain becomes this idea we have of the functioning. We see the functioning of life. We see things that are happening, and I'm not directly controlling them, right? Thoughts are coming. Where are the thoughts originating from? What's controlling this or that? And we have this idea of the brain, the neurology, and all of that, right? I examine it closely. I go, I cannot find any evidence of a brain. All I ever find whenever I look is consciousness. I can never find anything outside of it. So for me, just looking at my own direct experience, I draw these conclusions that it is not a material universe. It is not a physical body. It is not controlled by neurological patterns. That these are habits of thought, habits and conventions of thought, and not actual laws. That's a very long-winded way of trying to go into it. But for those of you who really weren't interested in the whole brain thing, it's like, how do you actually come to know if something is true? We've been told all sorts of things about our bodies and our minds and all sorts of things. And taking something in as a belief, I tend to bring it into existence. I tend to experience life through that lens. So what I believe about life isn't innocuous. It isn't neutral. It has a profound effect. It will determine the character and quality of your life. So I ask you, really, what is the evidence, the direct evidence in your experience of the nature of what it is you are experiencing? If you look closely, you find what I'm experiencing is consciousness. That's all I ever experience. Matter of fact, consciousness and experiencing are synonymous. No consciousness, no experiencing, right? They're the same thing. You can't possibly separate those two things. So taking that position gives you the authority to examine every aspect of your life and determine what's true and what isn't. And what happens is when you find yourself realizing, well, no, I cannot find any evidence of any material object whatsoever. I cannot find a world except as a belief. I can't find it. Now, your direct experience, right, runs into the habit of belief. And now it becomes, oh, is this true or is this? And you can see they result in very different lives, very different ways of being. This way, fear, limitation, doubt, pain, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's a materialistic universe. There is no self in a materialistic universe. It's nihilistic. You are a robot. There's never been free will. There never could be. That's the materialistic model. That's the model of a brain. If I am the brain, I don't exist. There is no person. There's nobody. It's totally nihilistic. Consciousness is an illusion, which is a weird thing because who's having the illusion? But you're a total robot. Everything is conditioned. End of story. That is the material model. Meaningless universe. It's depressing. That's a totally depressing model. Whereas the model of consciousness only, there's life, there's vitality, there's interest, there's beingness. There is a self, and it's not a limited self. It's not just conditioning. Right now, human consciousness this is all kind of mishmashed together. And what Satsang, non-dual inquiry, does is separate that out, which is true and which isn't, which leads to a grand life and which leads to death. I mean, not death, but oblivion, right? Nothing. So that's why it's important. That's why it's this isn't just a nice thing to do when you get the time. I mean, the whole quality of your life depends on the quality and integrity of this inquiry. So I hope that helps you out there, Jay. So the ones that were deleted by my visitor. Hi, G. I reported every message from that guy. Oh, he won't be back. Trust. Thank you. This happens. It happened last week. I often wonder what it is that drives somebody to just take pleasure in being annoying. I mean, I'll bet this is an intelligent, creative person, right? I mean, I go on a date or something, man. Anyway, okay. What can you say about evil, GP? Consciousness is responsible for all the evil. Humans are not the operators. They are the expressions of consciousness, I heard Muji say. This is from Chris. I can give an answer, but it would come across as just kind of being, it either become too intellectual or it'll seem too removed and cold, right? Because evil is a problem. Look at the world. The world is suffering terribly. We cannot ignore that, right? You cannot, I'm awake, so I don't see any suffering. No, if you're awake, you see the suffering, right? And you naturally want to do something about it. The thing to do something about it is to clearly see through it, right? You cannot alleviate suffering if you're still in the midst of all of the inner confusion and ignorance that is causing suffering. And it is ignorance that is the source of suffering. So the problem of evil is not solved intellectually, right? It is solved by knowing who you are. And in the knowing of who you are, you know who they are. And so you understand that the problem of evil is the problem of unconsciousness. The conditioned state of the human being that is unawake is selfish. It is geared completely towards the survival of itself and its group. It makes up whatever laws it wants. It does what we would call evil. Evil is simply unconsciousness. It is acting from a completely unconscious, ignorant place. And so love becomes restricted to me and my tribe. And therefore, whatever I do to somebody else is okay. Right? It becomes very primitive, very primal, very stupid, very willfully ignorant. It just ignores whatever contradicts its beliefs. There's no openness. There's no spaciousness. There's no conversation. There's no ability to do it. Just I'm right. That's it. This is the end result. That's what we experience as evil. It's ignorance. Wipe out the ignorance for you. Right? That's what you have to do. Christ wasn't kidding when he said, "You want to remove the sliver from your brother's eye? Get the log out of your eye." We have to purge these things from ourselves and see that what we're dealing with is not really a feeling empathetic human being. We are dealing with a robot. We are dealing with nothing but conditioning. And that ultimately that will have to be seen. The politicians, obviously in Australia from somebody else's comment, and definitely here in the US, they're all asleep. All of them. Almost all. Completely. They're asleep. They're completely locked within their worldview, refuse to look outside of it. That's conditioning. That's willful ignorance. So the approach is we have to dispel ignorance. It's the only way we can do it. And the way we do it is through our own inquiry and love, compassion, even for those that are inflicting the much of the pain on the world. Christ said it, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." They are ignorant of what they are doing. And his is the perfect example of how to deal with that. Even he refused to budge from his position of representing the truth, which is exactly what he said to Pilate, according to the story. Refused even to defend himself. It was nothing but love from one thing, from at every single step along the way, no matter what they did to him, no matter what they said, no matter what the accusations were. He met absolutely everything with love. This is what we should be striving for. This is the true answer to evil in the world. It doesn't do any good to really just describe it theoretically as to what it is. It's ignorance. It is unconsciousness. And the solution to unconsciousness is consciousness. If I believe I am this separate self, which is nothing but conditioned responses, I will simply act out my conditioning, whether that conditioning happens to be me as a struggling poor person, a middle-class person that has some feeling of entitlement, right? Or an uber wealthy person who does enormous harm because of the power they wield. It's all unconscious conditioning. There's no freedom in it at all. Freedom comes from waking up, and waking up alone. So you have to become free of conditioning. Then you'll be the naturally loving, naturally truthful, and I might add, powerful being. Because when truth speaks, it inevitably gets heard, because you can't silence it. Lies, ignorance, they will disappear because they're not self-sustained, but truth won't, because it is self-sustained. So thank you for that, Chris. What else we got here? Triality. Hi, GP. Happy to finally join you live. Oh, welcome. Can you talk about equanimity? Yes. I love equanimity. Equanimity is simply seeing things as they are, right? I'm going to do my Captain Picard routine now, right? Seeing things, when we are willing to allow things to be as they are, we drop our argument with reality. We drop our argument with life. We drop our arrogance that thinks that we know the way things should be. And we let ourselves experience things exactly as they are. We sink naturally into the state of equanimity, which I will also call allowing. You become equanimous. If I have no position, right, I'm open to all positions. I have no agenda. I have no axe to grind. I'm present. I am fully present in the moment. I'm equanimous. I am not reactive. The opposite of equanimity is conditioned reactions. Right? Get that. Conditioning is always reactive, right? When some conditioned response happens in our system, it's a response, right? It's a pre-programmed unconscious response to a particular stimulus from the environment. So something happens out here. The nervous system has been programmed to react to that event in a certain way. The way it has been programmed to react will depend completely upon the environment, the tribe you're in, the people, all of the history, your entire experience. There's absolutely nothing absolute about any event causing any particular reaction or any reaction at all, right? Events can just happen without a reaction. Matter of fact, lots of things happen in your life. There's no reactions whatsoever. Other things happen and something happens inside, right? That is the unconscious conditioned response that immediately takes a position, defensive, usually, right? That is now the state of resistance, the state of defense, which is the exact opposite of equanimity, right? When that conditioned reaction is no longer there, or at least consciousness is there enough that it no longer identifies with that conditioned response when it happens, it just let it happen and moves through the system, right? You are now in the state of allowing, right? That's the only place that can happen. And then that connection between the reaction and the stimulus from the environment gets broken because they're not absolutely connected, right? And you know that, something can happen and one person could totally freak out, the other be no big deal. So there's nothing inherent in any event or happening that mandates a particular reaction. So the effect is not in the cause. There's another real mind awakener, isn't it? The effect and the cause are not, it doesn't actually exist. Something happens, it's just a happening. It becomes cause and effect when there's a reactive response to it. Otherwise, no effect, no cause, right? So it's just a happening otherwise. So, which means that everything that's happening is actually equanimous. It's totally neutral. And without a programmed response to it, we experience it as neutral. And that's equanimity. That's that state of just pure allowing. You're letting everything be as it is. Now, the practice that develops that, I call the yoga of allowing. I call it, and it is the conscious practice based on the understanding that I just presented, that there's no actual causal connection, that this does not mandate it. The reaction is not in the happening, but it is a pre-programmed response, that it's arbitrary, that came from just the particular circumstances of your life. When that is seen, the wisdom, the intelligence of consciousness is now present when the thing happens and the conditioned response happens. When you're unconscious, that is not equanimous, you're identified with that. And so this becomes my reaction, my thing, I don't like that, right? I'm now identified with that reactive response. Consciousness emerges, and now I'm seeing it. It is nothing but that. It's not me. It's just this robotic reaction. And yes, I'll feel it, right? And in the beginning, when I'm first seeing it, I may even get hooked into it and start, and then, what am I doing? It's just a reaction. And little by little, the whole energy of it begins to dissipate until there is no reaction anymore. And that event can happen and just passes right through you. That's the state of equanimity. And the practice is that seeing. Once you've seen it, now you let it sink more deeply in. It goes more deep. It just deepens so that the reaction happens. You go, wait, okay, I'm in reactive mode now. I'm not even sure what the reaction is, but I'm just going to feel it now. And that's how I teach it. Just simply go into the body and feel what's happening in the body when it's reacting, right? But don't identify with it. Don't jump on it. Don't follow the course of action that the reactive pattern has traditionally followed. You're feeling the impulse to do that, but you're not actually doing it. It's an uncomfortable position to be in at first, actually, because you want to take some kind of an action. But that's the practice. There's the stimulus, there's the reaction, but I'm the consciousness that's aware of it. And I'm choosing now, for lack of a better word, because I'm sitting in this higher place, I'm not going to follow along with it. I'm just going to be with it. And as it works through the system, and eventually it'll work through and go out. You're practicing equanimity at that point. And as that develops, and you're less and less unconsciously drawn into the reactive patterns, the calmer you get, the easier it gets, and eventually they don't happen at all. That's how you diffuse them. That's how you deprogram the system. And as far as I know, it's the only way you can, right? So, so triality. Did that answer it for you, buddy? On the screen, it looks like this is perfectly smooth, but it's got all these little things all over. I don't know where it came from. Coco says, amazing. Thanks, GP. You're welcome. Very welcome. We got 20 minutes left here. Yeah. Okay. Darsana. Hello, Darsana. Hello. Do you have any suggestions for depression? I'm conscious of it's around, but not able to get rid of it. Okay. Well, depression is a particular state that the emotional system gets into when it simply gets it's in a corner, right? It is a state where the emotions are being suppressed because there doesn't feel like there's much opportunity for them to be expressed. And it can happen if you've had a history, like as a child or something, where every attempt to express yourself met with, diminishment or pushing down or hurt or some kind of thing where it wasn't safe to express yourself. The only thing the nervous system can do in that point is shut down the expression, right? Because if all you ever get back from it is pain, the nervous system says, I'm not doing this, right? It's a threat to survival. So the natural expressive capacity of every human being becomes severely hindered. In some cases, that can come out as anger and bitterness. In some cases, it can come out as people, becoming overachievers. All sorts of different ways in which the dark side of it can come out. But for others, it just becomes a withdrawing, a shrinking violet. And that's what depression is. It's simply shutting down an emotion before you even can feel it, because feeling an emotion is painful, right? So what I would say to do, the most important thing to do, is to not be trying to get rid of it. Now that may sound strange, because obviously what I want is you to be free of it, right? But to become free of something, this is a total paradox, you must first completely embrace it. Why do I say that? It was an essential trauma that was a conflict between you and the environment, right? And that conflict put the nervous system in a defensive position so strong that it won't even let an emotion come up. It's found the place that it can defend itself and therefore keep you alive, which it worked, obviously, because you're here, you're asking the question, right? So because the problem is an overzealous defensive mechanism, to try to get rid of it only makes it stronger. And it's already defended against anything you can throw at it. It's way better at this than you are. This is the number one reason why the vast majority of self-help techniques simply don't work. There's this intention to fix or change or make better or correct, but that making better, changing, fixing is exactly what happened to us in the first place that caused the defensive posture. It was not acceptance. So the only thing that can undo it, the only thing that can bring something out of a defensive posture is acceptance and love. That's it. Because there is no defense for love. It doesn't need, nothing needs to defend itself against love. If you're accepted, you're there, you're open, right? So we have to adopt this kind of a relationship with ourselves, to accept our feelings, to accept what's happening in this moment, to allow myself to feel angry or upset or tired or bored or even depressed, to let myself feel that, which takes all the pressure off. I've got to get rid of this, got to get rid of this. It takes all the struggle out of it. And when the struggle is gone, what remains is just you, present, really present with yourself. And that's the loving gift. Okay, this is what I'm feeling. I totally accept myself feeling this. Okay, I don't like it, but okay, but I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to be present with it. I find that the use of EFT is extremely effective in this. It's why I use it, because it helps the body do this, especially in cases where there's a lot of wounding and trauma going on. I'll be doing an EFT every week for the chakra class, by the way. I'm getting my little plug there. I'm still trying to bring people into the class. It starts tomorrow, officially. gpwalsh.com/chakras. There's my plug. So EFT does this physically by communicating to the body that it's safe, which is, of course, the absence of safety that created the defensive posture that put this whole thing into place. So when I say to like totally embrace it, totally accept it like that, it's not unfounded. It's not, there's a method to that madness. It takes the nervous system out of defensive mode. And healing does not happen until you're out of defensive mode. As long as you're in defense, healing is going to be slow and really almost impossible. Right? So I know what depression feels like. You simply have run out of moves. Okay, this is what it feels like when you've run out of moves. There's nothing I can do. There's these things, and I want them to change. So I'm just going to let go right now. I'm just going to surrender to the way things are. I'm just going to say, well, maybe the universe knows what it's doing. Right? Anything to stop the fight. Drop the fight and let yourself be present. And just see what happens. It won't be easy at first because, yes, it's not pleasant. It's a very unhappy place to be. But if you can learn to be totally present with what is here, and I mean really present with it, really allow it to the point where it's okay that you're here, you have stepped into the realm of unconditional love. And that is the only thing that has ever healed anything ever. Every technique, everything we try only works if it effectively brings somebody to a place of loving self-acceptance. That is the space in which the nervous system itself can say, look, I don't have to defend myself anymore. And the walls just start to come down. Slowly, sometimes, I'm not sure I can trust this, right? Because for the longest time, you couldn't, you know? I know in my childhood, I could not let my guard down for a second. If I did, wham, I was slammed. And it was not gentle. It was very painful. So my guard was up constantly. I was vigilant, right? I was the Artful Dodger. Nothing got by me, right? It took me a long time to get out of that mode. It still pops up. It may pop up to the day I die. I have no idea. But still, I'll just find myself just, whistling, and all of a sudden this voice will go, you really shouldn't be happy now. You really shouldn't be happy. Any minute now. I go, oh, there you are again. Wow. Because I wouldn't even let myself be happy, because that was punishable for me. So yeah, I intimately know how twisted this whole thing can get, but I also know that this is the way out. This is the royal, the loving, the kind way out. And it doesn't take a lot of time. Your nervous system is very smart. When it detects that you are no longer a threat, it immediately begins to open up. So thank you for that question, Darsana. Thank you very much. Mary Sykes. Hi, Mary. Would you say that not being attached to a thought or feeling could be called impartial self-observation? Yes. Absolutely perfect way of putting it. Yes. It is impersonal self-observation. It is being the witness without a vested interest in what's being witnessed, right? That is the state of equanimity. That is the state of pure being, right? Because pure being doesn't have a preference, right? If there's a preference, if I don't like that thought, right? Make sure that while you're witnessing that thought, the non-attachment means I don't care whether it's there or not. I don't mind it being there or not. It's not a big deal. It can be there. Fine. I'm neither averse to it, nor am I attached to it. Oh, give me more of that or get away. Neither of those. It is simply a thought arise. Oh, there's a thought. That's it. That's impartial self-observation. That is impersonal self-observation. That is the witness without a vested interest in what's being witnessed. And that is the highest place one can get to prior to stepping into the sense of witnessing even the witnessing, which is a more subtle step beyond even that. But this is the place. In this place, suffering can end, even prior to more fully the fuller realization of the witness that's even behind the witness. Thanks, Mary. David and Elaine, thanks for your answer, GP. Yes, interpreted the question spot on. Good. Dave Maloney. Hey, Dave. Hey, GP. I've chosen to hold the belief that anything that makes me feel alive is true. Getting bogged down in philosophy has limitations. Philosophy itself is a concept, after all. Thanks for this. Yeah. Yes, that's good. Anything that makes me feel alive is true. The thing that'll make you feel most alive is simply being aware of being aware. Without any you in your pure being, unmixed with anything else, is the aliveness. It's the most, and it is the most beautiful thing. Now, just to say something about philosophy, I heard one definition of philosophy that I think is extremely valuable because it's gotten kind of a bad rap, right? It's like all intellectual and conceptual. But I heard Francis Lucille quote somebody, and I can't remember who the guy said. And he said that philosophy was the use of reason to end suffering. I totally agree with that. Approaching it, reason, to use rationality to deconstruct suffering and to set somebody free from suffering, I totally am down with that as philosophy, right? But the philosophical part that's just intellectual and an examination and a rehashing and just is really the gaining of more knowledge doesn't help anybody. So I like that, just sticking with what makes me feel alive. That which recognizes what makes it feel alive is life itself. That's how you recognize it. So it's a small step from recognize what makes you feel alive to the realization that you are life. You are all of life. You are the sum. You are the consciousness in which life is appearing. So you know life. You know what makes you feel alive because you're life. Beautiful, beautiful. Dave Rose. I read an old book by Alan Watts, and I like Watts, so do I. But in his book, The Wisdom of Insecurity, he states there's absolutely nothing that you can hang on to. No security at all. Yeah, but let's be clear here, right? You cannot hold on, get security from anything relative, okay? The absolute doesn't have to hold on to anything, and it is security itself. It's completely secure. There's nothing more secure than the truth, right? What could be more secure than that, right? Can't do anything about it. Can't get rid of it. You can obscure it. You can lie about it. You can defame it. right. You can have entire news networks devoted to obscuring it, but you can't get rid of it. There's nothing more stable or secure than that. When my sense of self is rooted in the truth, that is security. There's no security in any thought, in any belief, in any practice, in any teacher, in any situation, in any state of mind, because all of those are shifting and changing. So there's no security there. To know that is security, right? Because at that point, I let go of trying to find permanence in the impermanent, to find security in the insecure. I'm not investing my life in something that I know is going to shift, and the relative always will. Every belief system, everything shifts, right? So there's no security there. There is no security in the world. Absolutely true. No point even looking for it. So does that mean it does not exist? Well, it does not exist as a form. It does not exist as a state or a condition. It doesn't exist as a belief. It exists as the truth. There is nothing more secure or permanent than the truth. It is permanence itself. To know yourself as you actually are is to be the permanent self, the unchanging self, right? Which is not an object. It's not a thing. It's not something that doesn't change. It is itself the perfect, unchanging essence of all. That which gives everything else life. So, yeah, we don't want to take a statement that he makes and just like do it, like, because nothing's absolutely absolutely true, including what he just said, right? Buddha pointed that out in the Heart Sutra. All dharmas are empty. It says it right there. And a dharma is a teaching, right? And of course, in Buddhism, the dharma is the teaching of the Buddha, who says the dharmas are empty, which means they're not absolutely true. They're simply a mode in this moment, giving voice to the truth in a form that's appropriate for this moment. But the truth itself, completely transcendent, completely beyond anything we can conceive of. But it is absolutely changeless, self-luminous, self-existent, self-sustaining. Wonderful, wonderful. And thank you, Jay, for your kind donation. We do feel fatigue and pain in our body. I understand its sensations, but we can't let it bleed out. I'm sorry, just trying to clear a question. No, I totally get it. No, of course. Take care of the body. Right. Don't confuse the existential or non-dual inquiry with just the conventions of everyday life, right? We're not trying to say don't take care of your body, right? If you're cutting, it didn't really happen. No, get the damn thing worked on. I always tell people to, if they've got something going on in their body, get it checked out. Make sure there's nothing there. These aren't mutually exclusive, right? But to come to the true sense of your existence, right? You have to go beyond the body. Take care of the body in the best way that you know how. Now, the more you understand the nature of the body, the better you can take care of it, because you know it for what it really is, the sensations themselves, until you get to a point like Christ and many yogis that spontaneously healed everything. Physical illnesses, mental illnesses, emotional illnesses, financial illnesses, right? Because they all have at their root the same essence. So yeah, this isn't to say, okay, stop taking care of your body, stop eating, or just eat nothing but junk food. None of that. That is, it's silly and self-destructive. Right. But when we're inquiring into the nature of things, because we're trying to discover our true self, then we engage in a question like, there is nothing but, so there is no, I'm not the body. That's what's important to see about this, that I'm not the body, that nobody is the body, that what I experience as sensation is not a sensation originating in some form out there, but it's actually originating within me. That this is an expression of my true self. And so I have redeemed the very object, that very sensation, it doesn't make it go away. I'm just now seeing it as it really is. And so now I experience those sensations more fully. I experience more life, more vitally, more alive, right? Because it's not secondhand anymore, right? It's not something's going out there and I'm perceiving it's going through all this stuff and ending up in here in the brain and image, and there's something looking at it. It's myself. It is absolutely direct. It is intimate. There's no middleman, right? And so everything becomes me. Others become myself. The line between us all just falls away, and it's just this incredibly beautiful dance of emptiness and love. So, by all means, yeah, don't turn this into some kind of of an absolute statement that this is how you're supposed to take care of the body. The body doesn't exist, so don't pay any attention to it. No, I eat healthy, I exercise, I take care of myself, because it's just it's the wise thing to do. This is how you integrate non-dual understanding in the world. I just make better choices. I don't eat crap food. I don't eat anything processed. I don't eat meat. I saw sorts of things. These are decisions that I've made based on my deeper understanding of the nature of life. So I'm harmonizing my human life with the spiritual reality I've awakened to. Right? So they're not incompatible. The mission is to bring heaven to earth, right? It is not to just ignore earth, right? It's to establish the reality of being here on earth in the most gentle, practical, and human ways. So thank you for that. October Paul, thank you, GP. I'm very grateful for your wisdom. You're the perfect marriage of the head and heart, and you are one of the most profound teachers I've ever seen. Whoa, thank you. It wasn't always like that. It was a lot of head first, right? And for I think it was Sue who wanted to know a little bit about my personal life. This is a moment to throw something out there. For a long time, I tried to overcome the body, just like I was talking with Jay here. I one of the first traditions I learned, that was it. You always dealt with it just in the mind, and I just saw the havoc it wreaked on my life and on others. But I was really into that, and I think a lot of the troubles and experiences I had post that awakening when I was 19 was exactly that. Was life waking up my heart, right? I had seen all this stuff. I had been totally transformed, but I needed to be broken open, and it were those experiences where that happened. So that now I can move between the head and heart. And it was finally Zen Buddhism that opened me up to the ultimate reality of that. And believe it, there's a beautiful example of it. And that the Chinese symbol for mind and the Chinese symbol for heart are the same symbol. There's this beautiful quality, and I've mentioned before probably the most significant of the gods and goddesses in Asia is Kanon. It's Kanon in Chinese, it's Kanzion in Japanese, it's Kwanum, Quinyen, all sorts of different names for this goddess. And she's always standing, her hand is up. She's got this oil, the balm of healing in her hand. She's standing on the lotus. She is both the goddess of wisdom and compassion. And interestingly enough, she originates with Avalokiteshvara, who is the one who gave the Heart Sutra, approved by the Buddha. And Avalokiteshvara, you change one name in Avalokiteshvara, I think it's Shavara, and it becomes feminine. And don't even know if the person existed. There's really no evidence for it. It simply means one who looks down. And so it's this beautiful image that Avalokiteshvara, the male, gets transformed into Kanon, the feminine, as the goddess of compassion. And the Heart Sutra is about the heart of Buddhism, which is the conjoining of the heart and the mind, the end of fear, the breaking down of the walls in the mind, and the ultimate wisdom that takes you beyond. It takes you to the other shore. And that's pictured in the goddess of both wisdom and compassion. And so the two meld together, so that in gaining the wisdom, you never lose touch with the suffering human heart. That's the bodhisattva path. That's the highest path in Buddhism, spoken by Buddha himself. That is the great vehicle, the Mahayana, the path of the bodhisattva, which is the one who embraces human suffering and does not shy away from it, takes it on themselves, first by overcoming the suffering, and then, because of that overcoming, can take it on themselves and see through it. So you get the bodhisattva vow, which is one of the most beautiful and can seem rather obscure when you first hear it, which is, suffering beings are innumerable. I vow to save them all. And having saved all beings from suffering, no being was saved. Sums it up about as succinctly as you can. The wisdom that sees through the illusion of suffering brings all beings out of the illusion into the light of truth. And it happens completely within the consciousness of you, the one perceiving it. So that is, to me, the only thing worth striving for. And believe me, I went both sides of that path for a very long time and got beat up badly. so I could speak with some authority, some authority on it. And you'll find that the things that I refer to as the Neo-Advaita teaching, you'll find that it's the heart that's missing. The wisdom is here. They'll tell you much of what I'm saying, right? But the heart's missing, right? They need to have their hearts broken open, and they will at some point. So thank you for that. Emiliano says, I agree with Paul. Thank you very much. Robert Hill says, Watts says anxiety and excitement are the same vibrations, seen from a different perspective. Yeah. Can we make anxiety feel good? There's a difference between anxiety. Both are based on expectation. Excitement is, I'm excited about what's going to happen. Anxiety is, I'm not. I don't want it to happen. So one's attachment, one's aversion. When you look at them as purely sensation, you'll find that they're exactly the same vibration, but they do have a very different focus of attention and a different cause. That which is creating that particular sensation, in one instance, is the expectation of a negative, something bad happening, and the other, something good happening. If we realize that both of those expectations are completely within the mind, and neither one of them is actually present in this moment, the sensation itself can go from anxiety or excitement into peace. I'm answering a little quicker now because I'm over time, and I've got quite a long list here. Jay donates again, says, thank you, G. It's time to break inner patterns. Yeah, it is. Yeah, this is a good time to do it, like now. Let's see. Anna Falofa, do you think that things that are happening now with nature and the planet is self-release of the earth, self-cleaning from people, and all that we bring to this planet? It's an awakening for sure, right? All I can say is the evidence that I can offer for what I have to say about this being a symptom of consciousness awakening is that in my own life, my greatest insights have always come when I've been kicked in the ass, when I've been pushed up against the wall. Just like anybody else, I could become complacent, right? Oh, I got this. This is good, and I'm kind of floating along, right? And maybe not as being as persistent, as curious, really, about the nature of reality. And what happens? Wham! Circumstances happen. It's okay untoward circumstances happen, right? That's how we grow. That's how we learn. That's how we, it's every species. The environment changes on us. We have to change. We have to change with it. Otherwise, we just stay exactly the way we are. I understand. I think alligators and sharks have not changed in 50 million years. They're the same now as they were 50 million years ago, because they're the top of their food chain. No, until we arrived, there was nothing threatening them, and there was nothing in the environment to cause them to make any kind of adjustment. Now, if you look at that as a metaphor for human beings, go, okay, so I got smacked down a bit. This isn't a bad thing. A lot of people go, this is terrible. I want to get back to, or trying to get back to where you were. Can't do it. Right? So it's okay when this when this stuff happens. Now, if you just take that on an individual level, which we've all experienced, right, and just roll it up to the collective consciousness that we all share, our common essence, right? We find human consciousness as a whole is going through exactly the same kind of leavening. And to me, it seems quite evident that that's what's happening. It matches exactly my own personal experience, just magnetized 8 billion times. And so I have the same confidence. And I do regard the earth as consciousness, as a mosquito and everything, right? What even appear to be inanimate objects. They are also within consciousness. So it's I don't see things as having consciousness. I see consciousness as having things. And so consciousness itself is awakening, is liberating itself from the dream. And that's being experienced as us waking up. You wanting to come to satsang rather than, go to the million other things you could do with your day, right? You choose to head in this direction instead. Why? Consciousness waking up, and consciousness as a whole, as an entity, as awakening itself waking up, appears as individuals awaking up, right? But it's not actually that, right? It's actually the whole of the leavening. God is waking up from her own dream, basically, is what it is. That's how it sees. And GP or Anna or Rob, those are the dream. They're in the dream. God is waking up from the dream of being the individual separate self. And that is being experienced in the dream. And the dream is the world as you see it, as it's being experienced. But it is a dream, and it is being woken up from, and it isn't going to take us all with it. And there is going to be a huge evolutionary step. I think it's going to be so big that we're going to look back on this time and see humanity the way we look back on the Neanderthals and see them. That's how different it's going to be. I'm not even sure the word human will apply anymore. Thank you. 99 Sanchez, some time ago I had an awakening experience, and I saw at the moment that my life purpose was to bring awareness to other people. But then I lost it, and I only see how difficult it would be. Because here in Spain, or in my environment at least, people seem to be so unconscious and closed-minded to these topics. Some advice? Thanks. And let you know you're doing so much good to the world. Oh, thank you. Thank you, 99 or Sanchez, Chavico. Bye. Well, you didn't lose it. Here's the important thing. You didn't lose it, right? You can't lose the truth. You can't lose the truth as an insight. What happened is that the habit energy, the momentum of the separate self, which is simply patterns of thought, emotion, and sensation, that's all it is, right? Have not been completely drained of their authority. They've not been completely seen through, right? That's what the awakening is seeing through it. And it comes in these glimpses of these moments. And then we think, I lost it. No, that's a thought. You are that, right? So you can't lose it. So what happened? It got veiled again, right? It happens to everybody, all right? There's a few instances I know in history. Ramana Maharshi, Steve Jourdain. I couldn't count. I mean, I have more than enough fingers to count the people that it's happened like that on one hand. For most people, there's that aha, it's there for a minute. You feel it. You know it's true. It's intuitive. You don't need anybody to confirm it for you, right? It is self-affirming, self-luminous, and self-sustaining. That's truth, right? And you feel one with it. You're one with it. But then thoughts come back up, emotions come back up, sensations come back up, all that contradict it. Thump, there's the veil, right? And you just thought you lost it. The thought says, I lost it. Nope. Notice that you're the consciousness that is witnessing the thought that said, I lost it, right? It's just a thought. You couldn't lose it. You're it. So there's no way you can possibly lose it. So now it just becomes a process of letting what you actually are integrate in through the entire system. And yes, when you taste that, there's nothing else you want to do but to share it with the rest of the world. Nothing else matters because you're liberated. It's like, oh my God, I've got to share this. It's like, something good happens in your life. What do you want to do? You want to call a friend and tell them, but you want to share the news, tell your family. It's like, this is great, announce it, right? Of course, it's the same thing. Of course you want to do that. And, let's face it, some people are more receptive to it than others, It was even written about Christ that there are some places just shake the dirt from your shoes, right? There's nothing you can do about it. It was even quoted, there were some places their faith was so little he couldn't even do any good works, right? Couldn't even do the miracles. So yeah, some places are just not open to it. So what do? Your job is to deepen and deepen and deepen and deepen and deepen. Go deeper and deeper. Pull away more of the veils off of the eye, and become established in that place that you've seen. And do not, for one moment, ever again say, "I lost it." You cannot lose the truth. That's the illusion, right? So throw that thought out and recognize that, oh, I just got seduced again into believing all the conditioned patterns. Okay, the conditioned patterns are there. Just because they're there doesn't make me any different than what I am. The presence or absence of a particular thought or emotion does not change the reality of who I am. Even if I believe it, it doesn't change the reality of it. Right? So put your stake in the ground there, right? And give that your attention. Don't worry about that. The more attention you give that, guess what? People start showing up. People just start coming and going, hey, what is it? Something about you, right? Or you'll be having a conversation with somebody who doesn't seem to be the least bit interested in something, and you won't even know why. In fact, you'll probably say it before you even have any idea you're going to, and go, ooh, what did I just say? And they'll go, oh, and suddenly a little light will go on inside of them. You just never know how it's going to work. So just keep deepening and deepening and deepening, and believe me, the rest will take care of itself. And you will find that even in Spain, where you, seem to be so unconscious and closed-minded, you'll find big pockets of those who are not closed-minded and are actually striving for consciousness and want what you have to offer and want to share what they have to offer with you and want to have community and sangha with you. It's there. Let's see. Did I skip somebody? Oh, Christian. GP, thanks for the messages. They are so insightful and helpful for stabilizing myself as the consciousness. Good. PD Viz says, hey GP, thank you so much for these vids. I've been feeling for the past 4 years that my ego is dying, so to speak. I'm at peace without thought and interests. Is this normal? Yes. I'm only depressed when I try to become someone I'm not. Yes, of course. You don't want to be who you're not. Yes, when you are, interest is an active outward focus. And it's not that there's something wrong with it. It happens. It's natural. It's just not the interest of a person. interest simply arises. And when it arises, it has the interest in the thing. I get interested in all sorts of things, right? But I'm also aware that the interest isn't personal. It's just the way consciousness is unfolding in that moment, right? And so what you're saying is that I'm at peace without interest and thought. Yes, because that's the natural state. Without any activity of mind or emotion or body or anything, there's nothing but stillness, peace. Now, the more you're established there, when some interest comes up, there's an energy behind it. It doesn't take you out of peace, it doesn't take you out of that place. You see it from that place. And at that point, it may fulfill itself. You can have desires and interests and fun. You can have love affairs. You can have, careers. You can make art. You can do stuff, right? But none of that takes you out of the place from which it's being viewed. Your sense of identity remains absolutely stable. And now life is experienced more abundantly. It's actually experienced more. There's no attachment to it anymore. So if some interest comes up or a desire comes up and it doesn't fulfill itself, it's like, okay. If it does, okay, right? You get the full range of human experience. There's nothing gating it. There's no judgment. This is better than that, right? Well, there's no relative judgment of it. It's simply, you simply, oh, this is cool. I really like this, and I'm not dependent upon it. So now my happiness is stable, and that's the most important thing, right? To simply be happy, content now. That's, I can spend eternity that way, which is good because that's exactly what you're going to do. Just be yourself. Ava says, it's good to listen to you and just remain immersed in truth and love you're sharing. Thank you, G, with much appreciation. Thank you to you, Ava. We are getting to the bottom here. Yes, great answer. Thanks, G. From Dave, Brian, Dave Rose, and hang on to, rather than nothing that is. Yes. Yeah, good. Yeah. That's good. Thank you, Brian. Liza, much gracias. Muchas gracias, GP. Same to you. Encanta, Lisa. Anonymous, is it okay to kill people if you plan to eat them? We're in the world of that. Right. No. No, it's not. Short answer. Varuka, my boyfriend kept cheating on me. I watched a voodoo on YouTube that gave me a tool. I placed my period blood in his office. Now we are married. Okay. Well, congratulations. I hope you have a very happy, prosperous life. PD Viz, how quick do you think the mass awakening is happening? Anonymous, you are scary, he says. No, he's just he's just being a bit of a troll. That's all. How quick do you think the mass awakening is happening? I don't know. I mean, it's fast if you look at it historically. I mean, none of the things that we have available to us now were available to me, right? When I grew up in the 50s, even when I was awake, it would start to wake up in 1971. Kid in the Midwest, there was nothing. there was nothing. I was kind of this isolated case. But it's accelerating, and things accelerate, right? The more there is, and what I do here is my attempt to contribute to that acceleration. Right? That's why I ask you to like and share, right? That helps with the acceleration. I invite everybody into a deeper, into taking this more to heart. Make this the most important thing in your life, if you can. I mean, it has to happen naturally. You can't, I'm going to make it that. It's not a discipline, right? But I just find the more I look at it, the more I fall in love with it, the more curious I get about it, the more interesting it is, the more I'm just, wow, this is amazing. And then sometimes it's therapeutic. Sometimes I go, something's coming up and I have to be with it. And it's not about the curiosity. It's about freedom. And that's okay. That's okay too. But the more we just love it, the more we fall in love with truth, the more powerfully it works on us and the more powerful our influence is with others. So want to thank you all for being here. I guess this can bring it to a close. So thanks. Thank you for joining me for another satsang. As always, this is my high point of the week. I absolutely love doing this. I love seeing the quality of the questions mature over time. Please invite other people into this conversation. Those of you who are so inclined, my class, my final plug for my class that's starting this week. I really think it is going to be a valuable thing for everybody involved. Those who have actually seen what material is already available have been quite delighted with it. Since I've really matured in this and really got the whole the whole interplay, the dance of head and heart, every class I've done has been an attempt to give us a bridge between where we are in our human lives and the absolute reality that we are in truth, without diminishing either. Because the true middle way, as the Buddha taught, that it is neither absolute nor relative. Right? So dual or dual, both of those are just words, right? The human and the divine. It's coming to see that the human is the divine. The human is reality made manifest, and the relative, the human being, is in essence the absolute truth. That the two are not two; they're one. And to really come to see that, I've spent my whole career here as a teacher, building these bridges between where one's understanding is and where it can get to. And this class that I'm doing now is one of those, to do it through the ancient system of the chakras, which after the first week, I never used that word again. I completely redefined them and show them in a deeper meaning that is, I think, will be very valuable to everybody here. So gpwalsh.com/chakras will get you into the class, and it is 10 weeks long. So I'm charging for it. I can't just do that one by donation because it's a big commitment on my part. So, all right, everybody, I love you all. Until next week, we get to do this. When we get to do this again, remember who you are. It's really that simple. Just remember yourself as the pure consciousness that is beholding everything, that is already free, is already full, is already richly abundant, is already everything you could possibly dream of. You are what you are seeking. That's simply the fact. So, till next week. Namaste.